What do Dennis Schröder and the Boston Celtics owe each other? I'm going to talk about it right now on the Monday Locked On Celtics.
So hype right now. Anything's possible. I'm on mama. I'm on my lady, ma. Anything's possible.
Yeah. Rain and J's back with the vengeance. All the real Celtics fans in attendance. This the truth like 34. This like walking in the garden when you hear the roars. The crowd goes crazy. Most in-depth coverage on the daily. Mainly podcast royalty, the content kings. When you talking about the franchise with 17 rings. Focus like Danny at the deadline. Global with it, got a local feel like the red line, the blue line, the green line. Play it in between time. I'ma throw my C's jersey on in the meantime and press play. When the F's done, I can't wait until the next day. Trying to stay in tune with the C's, that's the best way. Melly.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making the show part of your daily routine. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, listening to the show through your headphones, watching the show on YouTube, however it is that you're consuming the show, I really do appreciate you making me part of your Celtics experience. I'm John Karalis. I cover the team for Boston Sports Journal, and I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, a book that's now available wherever books are sold. You want a signed, personalized copy, you can get that at johnkaralis.com. Today, I'm getting into some of the ramp up to the regular season. We're 4 weeks away, and that's 4 weeks of shows that get us into the upcoming season. Now, a couple of weeks here will be some of these questions that I'm talking about, some mailbags and stuff. I'm also going to do a deep dive into the Brad Stevens era. Like, for people who remember our historical deep dives, we're going to do the same thing coming up in the 2 weeks before we get into training camp. We're going to do a deep dive into the Brad Stevens era, which I think will be a lot of fun to kind of really take a good look at what he was as a coach. So that's all coming up. But today I want to get into a piece that I wrote on Boston Sports Journal. What do Dennis Schröder and the Boston Celtics owe each other? It's kind of a basketball philosophical question in a lot of ways, but it gets to the heart of one of the most interesting dynamics on this team. By the way, this show is brought to you by Rock Auto. It's an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and then tell them Locked On sent you. So the Schröder dynamic with Boston is interesting. So the first segment, I just kind of want to get into really the meat of what's really happening with Schröder and the Boston Celtics. And then when I say, what do they owe each other? I'll get into each side in segments 2 and 3, the Schröder side, the Celtics side, because I think that while Schröder is in a lot of ways expendable, it doesn't matter what he does in some ways. If he's somehow completely disruptive, the Celtics can cut him. He doesn't have to stick around. He doesn't have to finish the season with the Celtics. He can be cut. He can be traded, whatever. So in some ways, there's an easy answer to any of the negative stuff that I'm going to bring up in this podcast. Yeah, you cut him. And that's certainly possible. However, you don't want to pay a guy nothing or pay a guy to do nothing, pay a guy to stay home. That's not what you want out of this. You want everybody on this team to be productive. So let's start with this. Dennis Schröder did not want to be with the Boston Celtics. That's not a team that he thought would fill what he wants, right? He wants a multi-year big contract. He wants the big payday. That's what Schröder is dying for right now. He's in the prime of his career. This is his chance to get paid a ton of money. And in some ways, he and his agent, they blew it. They didn't figure out the market. They miscalculated, whatever you want to say. He bet on himself, and that bet didn't come through. And I've talked about that a bit here on the podcast before. I'm not going to get on the guy for trying to bet on himself. And okay, so the market dynamics weren't what he thought they were. Fine. The Celtics weren't going out and targeting Dennis Schröder. They were going out and saying, okay, maybe a point guard, maybe whatever. This has been termed a bridge year, an evaluation year, whatever you want to call it. That it's been called a lot of things, but it's very obviously not a year that brings the Celtics forward. And in some ways, if you're a fan of television shows, this is sort of like the Christmas episode of basketball seasons. It completely stands on its own. It involves all of the characters that you are used to, but it really means nothing to the entire story that carries on, right? If you're a fan of Ted Lasso, you just watch the Christmas episode, it has no impact on the story. It didn't advance any storylines. This is a similar thing for the Boston Celtics. This season doesn't really advance a ton of storylines. It's kind of a self-contained season, if you will. It's not exactly an apples-to-apples thing because we do get to see Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart. We get answers to those guys, and we do get to see those guys progress. But I think you know what I'm saying, that this season has been, I think, we're not sure what Josh Richardson's going to be, how integral he's going to be to the future. Schröder is certainly a big question mark here. There's so much in flux that next season's teams could look so different that who knows how much of an impact this season will have on the overall storyline. So when Schröder is out there, the Celtics weren't really, I don't think, targeting Schröder, saying, hey, we need point guard help here. Here's a guy. But as the market dried up, I'm sure somewhere in that Celtics front office, that power structure, somebody said, hey, let's keep an eye on Schröder. Because if this team doesn't sign him, if that team doesn't sign him, you might be able to go in and steal this guy. And that's basically what happened. The Celtics were able to steal Schröder. They got a guy who is making less than $6 million a year, whose value on the open market should have been higher. And really, a guy with his talent tends to get paid more. And so the Celtics came in and said, yeah, we'll take him. It's almost like going into, I don't know, like an antique store or a yard sale or something. You're like, whoa, only this much for that? I don't really need it. It's something that might stick out a little bit, but if you're only going to charge me $5 for that thing, I'm going to take it and I'll figure it out. And this is where the Celtics are with Schröder. They basically were like, taxpayer mid-level for Dennis Schröder? He's not the perfect fit. He's not a guy that we might have targeted otherwise, but at 5.8 whatever million, 5.9 million, we'll take him. We'll take him and we'll figure it out. And Schröder's like, I need a team that needs a point guard. I need a team that could give me opportunity. And the Celtics are actually a team that could give him some opportunity. And so here we are, where, yes, it's a good value. At that money, no one disagrees that that's a good value contract. You got him on a good value. But it doesn't mean that it's perfect. In fact, this is one of the most unique one-year contracts that you can find because it's not like he's a ring chaser, right? Who are the one-year contracts out there in the NBA? Ring chasers who come in and say, hey, I'm 36. I want to go to the Lakers. They got a lot of those guys. I want to go to the Nets. All of that stuff. But that's not this, right? Who else signs one-year contracts? Middling, journeyman, kind of, hey, I got to take what I can get. I want to stay in the NBA. I've got a skill that I think is valuable. Those guys sign one-year contracts. And the team brings them in, and maybe they'll re-sign. But that's not this either. This is a guy in the prime of his career signing a one-year contract where everybody knows what the deal is. He's here to increase his value. He is here to leave. He is here to find a way to find another team so he can go and make a lot more money. Boston isn't looking for him to stick around long term. He's not looking to stick around long term. They're trying to figure out, hey, we got 1 year. We kind of need you. You kind of need us. I call it a one-season stand. How are they going to figure this out? What do they owe each other in this situation. There's a whole season of basketball going on here, and it's going to impact Smart. It's going to impact Pritchard. It's going to impact Tatum and Brown. It's going to impact everybody because Schröder is going to be a big minute player. 30 minutes or so is a lot of minutes in an NBA game. What do the Celtics, what do Schröder and the Celtics owe each other? So I'll get into each side as we continue here. But first, I got to tell you about SweatBlock. Basically, SweatBlock is an answer to excessive perspiration. A lot of people have this problem. It's an embarrassing problem. I understand you. I feel you. If you're out there, you don't want to wear certain color shirts. Some shirts, especially, and I've done this too, you go through and you figure, what's the material? What happens when this gets wet? How is it going to look? SweatBlock is the answer to all of that. A doctor who had this problem decided to create a solution. He came up with this issue, with this solution, and SweatBlock was the answer. So it's doctor created, doctor recommended. Basically, it looks like a wet nap, all right? It's a wipe. You take a shower, you wipe it on, you go to sleep. In the morning, you wash it off. What this doctor has found is that it works for up to 7 days for him. And it works for up to 7 days for a lot of people. Not the same for everybody. It might not work for you. It may not. But here's the best part about this. It's a guarantee. Try it. You've got the dry shirt guarantee. If it doesn't work for you, no risk. So give it a shot. If it works, I know how hard you're looking for a solution. I know how much you don't want to wear undershirts with your button-down shirts. So people see that collar, and basically you're signaling to everybody, hey, I got to wear this shirt underneath this so I don't look like I'm sweating all over the place. I get it. I've done it. So check out SweatBlock. Google SweatBlock. Go to Amazon and search SweatBlock. There are over 13,000 reviews. It's been a bestseller on Amazon for 10 years. So they're not hiding anything. Google it, go on YouTube, look for the firefighters on the Rachel Ray show who went in, used SweatBlock, went into their job and came out with dry shirts. So it's worth checking out. You're going to get 20% off with the promo code Locked On. So you get a deal with the promo code Locked On with 20% off. You get a guarantee that if it doesn't work, no problem, your money's going to get refunded. And then I don't see what else. I don't see what else there is holding you back. So sweatblock.com, promo code Locked On, or if you want, you can pick some up at CVS or at Amazon.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Indeed. Now, I know that hiring people, if you're looking for people to fill a job, I know it's a pain. I've done it. I've been a hiring manager in a past life, but you need to get something like Indeed because they take a lot of that hassle away from you. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed, the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. Just attract, interview, and hire. In fact, with Indeed, you can do all of your hiring in one place. You can even do the interviews on Indeed. This is so simple. Don't just hope that the perfect candidate will find you. Indeed's hiring tools will help you cut through the noise to hire faster and smarter. In fact, Indeed Instant Match provides you a list of quality candidates whose resumes are on Indeed the moment that you post your job. Post it, click, boom. Here are the people who match your jobs. According to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all the other job sites combined. There are more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked. That's Indeed.com/locked. Offer is valid through September 30th. Terms and conditions apply. Continuing my dive into what the Celtics and Dennis Schröder owe each other. It's coming off of a piece that I wrote on Boston Sports Journal that's publishing Monday morning. So if you're not subscribed to Boston Sports Journal, please do that and read my piece. But let's look into when I say what do they owe each other, this is an interesting, I think, dynamic. I'm fascinated by this dynamic because, again, as I said before, they do need each other, right? And Schröder is in Boston for a specific purpose. And the only thing that motivates him, like he needs to play well to go get another contract, right? But his motivation is strictly the contract. I don't think he cares necessarily about Boston. I don't think he cares about winning in Boston. I really don't think that he all he wants to do is, what can I do to maximize my value and sign a huge contract this offseason. But at the same time, you have to play nice, right? Part of increasing your value is playing nice. Going to another team's going to be watching him in Boston, and let's look at it. He's probably going to be the backup. And so he's going to have the ball in his hands to score a lot, right? He's going to be a scorer. The Celtics need scoring off the bench. He's going to come in and provide that. And so when I look at what he owes the Celtics, most guys, when you say, hey, what does Romeo Langford owe the Celtics? There is a level of effort. There is a level of, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to take my homework from the Celtics and, okay, I need to rebound better. I need to be able to develop a jump shot. I need to be able to do all this other stuff. Everybody's got that stuff. All these guys in Summer League. Aaron Nesmith, what does he owe the Celtics? He owes the Celtics maximum defensive effort and figuring out, developing his game to a point where he can take and make shots that he gets from the Celtics, from Tatum and Brown being on the floor. Right? You get that. So what does Schröder owe the Celtics? Well, it's a difficult question because he owes himself first. Like, he's going to go out there for himself first, but at the same time, he has to participate in this team dynamic. So he owes the Celtics some level of effort in the team dynamic. He needs to show other teams that he is coachable in a lot of ways, right? Like he has to show these other teams that, yeah, I can walk in. You're going to make a commitment to me for 4 years and big money, the big money that I want. What are you looking for from me? He owes Boston this effort. And you know what? Look, they're giving him this opportunity. The Celtics are saying, hey, we know why you're here. We know why you're here. So he does have some level of basketball moral obligation to say to the Boston Celtics, like, okay, yeah, I was not getting any opportunity out there on the open market. You're bringing me in. You're going to give me a situation. That backup situation is actually a pretty good situation for Schröder. I owe it to you to give you a little bit of what you're looking for. I owe it to the Celtics to say, okay, you want me to be a scorer, but when my minutes overlap with Smart and Tatum and Brown, you need me to be more of kind of stay out of the way. You kind of need me to be more of a passer. You kind of need me to be more of a defender. I think there is some level of basketball moral obligation to say, in those 30 minutes that I'm going to get, Dennis Schröder, I'm going to get 20 that are going to be perfect for me. And then I'm going to get 10 that I got to pinch my nose and take my medicine. And I think if you sit there and when you talk about owing it to them, the Celtics are going to give you those 20 minutes. You're going to get 20 minutes to whatever that number is to go do your thing. Be the guy that you want to be the scorer that you want to be. In return, the 10 minutes, we need you to play 10 alongside Smart. We need you to play 10 with Tatum and Brown. Can we work on the shooting? Can we get you to do these things that we need to make sure that we're developing, we're giving you something? What do we get in return? That's at the heart of this. Because if he doesn't give this stuff in return, then things can start to break down. That's when we start to get into problems. And then you start to ask the question, hey, why the hell is this guy eating into Peyton Pritchard's minutes when he's going to be gone after this year? This is at the heart of why I'm even asking this question. Because he's going to be eating into Peyton Pritchard's minutes. He's going to be eating into other players' minutes. Celtics fans, media, coaches, other players, we all kind of need to know the answer here and see what Schroeder's going to give the Celtics in return for them saying, okay, we are going to take away Pritchard's minutes a little bit. Maybe he could get 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes or whatever it is, but we're going to give those to you. What can you do with those minutes that makes everybody go, okay, we get it. I understand that Schroeder is taking away minutes from Pritchard, but right now I'm okay with it because X, Y, and Z are happening. This is the heart of this question. This is the heart of the answer to this question. What Schroeder is going to be able to give the Celtics in those minutes as a repayment for that time on the floor to show other teams, to basically showcase yourself for a trade. I don't even think showcasing for a trade is an actual thing. I think it's a made-up phenomenon, except for this case, because Schroeder is certainly showcasing himself either for a trade or for a signing. Let's flip this around. Let's look at it from the Celtics' perspective. What do the Celtics owe Dennis Schröder? That's coming up next after I tell you about Rock Auto, which is the place to go for anything you need for your car, truck, motorcycle, RV, camper, all of that stuff, right? Because think about how many car makes, models of everything are out there on the road, and then drive by one of those chain stores, those auto parts chain stores, and think to yourself, how can they possibly have everything that every one of these cars needs? Here's your answer. They can't, because it's impossible. But Rock Auto does, because you can go online. They're not restricted by the same shelf space as some of these other places are. So go check them out. You don't have to spend 30 to 50 to 100% more for some of these car parts. I've talked to people. People have messaged me and said, wow, I used Rock Auto. I saved hundreds of dollars. So I know that people are using it. I know that people are getting a lot of return bang for their buck. And it's on simple things like wipers or floor mats or anything like that, headlamps, and complicated things. Things for the engines, things in a car that I couldn't even begin to tell you what they are. But they're saving money. So check out Rock Auto. It's a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every single customer. It doesn't matter if you're a pro, doesn't matter if you're a do-it-yourselfer, whatever. Go to rockauto.com. Just check it out for yourself. Save yourself the trip to the chain store. Save yourself just telling that person behind the counter all of the things for your car. Just go to rockauto.com. Check it out. Cruise through the prices. I'm going to bet that whatever you're looking for, you're going to find a good price, and you're going to buy something at Rock Auto. Then write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That's how they know we sent you. You got to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. It's an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Hey, with football season around the corner here and baseball going down the home stretch, there's a lot of sports news. You're going to want to be caught up on all the big stories. make sure you're checking out the Locked On Today podcast with Peter Bukowski. You're going to get the big stories from around the sports world in about 20 minutes. So make sure you're following Locked On Today wherever you get your podcasts. Continuing my look at what the Celtics and Dennis Schröder owe each other. Again, this is part of a piece that I wrote on Boston Sports Journal. So please read that in addition to the podcast. It's a companion piece. Some things that I wrote aren't in the podcast and vice versa. So what I just did what does Schröder owe the Celtics? What do the Celtics owe Schröder here? What opportunities do they owe him? And I think the first thing that I think about is in that 20 minutes or so that he gets as the lead guy, let's say that he's on the floor and there's no Tatum, no Brown, no Smart. He's the lead guy out there. I think they owe him some leeway to go take a few minutes where you say, he should have passed that. I guarantee you there are going to be times I look at the film and I say, oof, Schröder should have passed that off. He should have done this. He should have done that. And it's important, like I said before, for Schröder to show other teams that he can make those plays and be unselfish. But I think there's also going to be opportunity here for Schröder to prove to these other teams like, hey, I can be your primary, one of your primary scorers. I can be a guy that comes out here and can go fill it up, 10 points, a personal 10-2 run or something like that. He's not going to do it often, but I do think that the Celtics, in some ways, sure, owe it to him to be able to do that. But this is where it works in tandem with one another. If he's going to be giving them that 10-minute stretch of overlap where I sit here and a lot of people sit here and question and say, I don't know how those 20 minutes are going to go or those 10 minutes are going to go. I think if he can give the Celtics that, then the Celtics can give him that early second quarter, early fourth quarter where it's just like, all right, Dennis, go do your thing. Go do your thing. Have fun. Whatever you and your agent decide need your whatever it is, go do it. It's a very it's almost like that that scene in The Office where all three guys are like holding their guns and they're doing this and then they drop them and then they do the put the guns up at each other again. It's almost like the Celtics and Schröder are kind of like in a little bit of a standoff. Again, they are in this kind of relationship where, hey, we need you, you need us. We know that this is temporary. We're going to let our guard down a little bit. You got to let your guard down a little bit. Let's just, on the count of three, let our guards down. And you can do your thing, but you got to give us our thing. And so the Celtics do owe Schröder this chance because he did sign here and he did fill this need. And they also do have the ultimate trump card of, hey, if you're just too much of a jerk in the locker room, if you're not playing this game with us, if you're not participating in this little moral basketball morality exercise, if you're not participating in this, then we have the ultimate trump card. We're going to cut you. And not only is that us cutting you, but if we cut you mid-season, you're done. There's no big contract coming. You're a mid-level guy for the rest of your career. So let's sit here and let's talk. Let's make this really work. And I do think that each side stands to gain a bunch here. Schroeder can be like playing to a point where the Celtics can actually get some trade value out of him. Now, he's an expiring contract, obviously, so another team's not going to give up the farm to trade for him, but all you need is two teams to want him. And if two teams want him, then there could be, at least to a minor degree, some kind of bidding war. There could be some level of bidding on Schroeder's services. And the Celtics could get something out of him, get 2 second-rounders, get a first-rounder maybe, get one of those young players that maybe needs a change of scenery type of thing. The Celtics aren't just building up his value to say, okay, goodbye, thank you. They can trade him. I think part of the goal here is to trade him. I don't even know that this whole relationship lasts past the trade deadline. The Celtics would love to trade Schroeder and get something of value for him. And so if they play this little game where we figure out what do they really owe each other, then Schroeder can benefit. He can go to a contender. Maybe he gets a ring. Look, Schroeder comes in, does everything he needs to do, gets traded to a contender. That contender goes off and wins a ring. What perfect value for him, right? That's the ultimate value for him because he did everything he was asked. He went to a contender. He helped them win. Somebody's going to sign him for a lot of money. And the Celtics get value out of him by saying, hey, we brought this guy in on a super cheap deal, less than $6 million. We traded him away. We got two second-rounders or a first-rounder or whatever they get that we wouldn't have gotten before, all because we said, all right, you know what? For this stretch of game, we're going to allow you to do your thing. For this, we're going to allow you to do certain things. We owe you something. You owe us something. Let's play this game together. This could be, I'm starting with this question because to me it's the most fascinating question for the Celtics. Beyond, like, Tatum could be an MVP candidate, sure. Jaylen Brown could be whatever he ends up being. Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, like, those are all good questions for the Celtics. But this Schroeder thing can be a fascinating scenario for the Celtics. Like, this is the most volatile in some ways. It's the most interesting in some ways. It is something that could benefit, like, the Celtics team. This team could be better than expected because of it. Then that brings up other interesting questions about what the Celtics do. So this relationship, this bizarre 1 year, we understand that you're only here because you want to make more money somewhere else. This is such a bizarre, unique situation. These kinds of contracts don't happen in the NBA. The 1 year, come here, we're going to play you a certain amount of time so you can specifically raise your value to go somewhere else and make a lot of money. That never happens. So in a lot of ways, I am really fascinated by how this is going to work. So I'm going to be super focused on it. Hopefully you have enjoyed the show. Hopefully you've gone to read my piece on Boston Sports Journal. If you've listened to the podcast before it's published, go back and please read it. And let me know. Comment. If you're in the YouTube page, comment below. Let me know what you think. I really want to know what other people are thinking about what the Celtics and Schroeder owe each other, because I think this is an interesting question and it goes a ton of different ways that I haven't even thought about. So please comment if you have the ability to, if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening on the podcast and you like the show, please rate, subscribe, review, all of that stuff. But most importantly, share the podcast. Please tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.